Hey, welcome back to Let's Fix It. Today we're going to work on the old Ford again. This is a 2012 F-150 XLT, and it is an EcoBoost. I was doing some routine maintenance on the truck, and I pulled the fill plug on the differential, and the oil that ran out of it looked like it had glitter in it. So the first thing we're going to do is get the truck jacked up and on jack stands. Next thing is to get the spare tire off from under and get it out of the way of the differential cover. Alright, so now the spare tire is out of the way. This is the differential cover we're going to take off to drain the differential on a Ford. There's a control line that runs through here. We'll take these off the bolts, set it up over top, get it out of the way. You'll need a 1/2-inch socket. Take these loose, and what we're going to do is we're going to loosen all of these and take these bottom bolts out. Then the others we're going to leave the top bolts in. One of the problems you're going to have is if you break the seal on this differential cover on the top, you'll have oil run all over the place. You want to break the seal down here on the bottom so the oil will come out the bottom and not make a big mess. Be sure you have an oil pan big enough to catch the quantity of oil that's in here. Alright, so there it is. If you were paying attention to the oil pouring out of this thing, you'll notice how I'm working outside in the wind. If you're doing this yourself, you may want to choose a less windy day. So the next thing is to clean up all this gasket surface through here. I bought a replacement gasket for this. It doesn't appear that it had one to begin with. I think this is kind of a common thing with car manufacturers today, is to forego the gaskets for a sealant instead. I've also got a can of brake cleaner because I want to clean out the oil a little bit. But what I want to be careful of, and we'll show you on this, is I've got a locking rear end on this, and I've got wires that run into the differential and down here to a magnetic solenoid. I do not want to get those covered in brake cleaner because I don't know what effect it'll have on them. I don't want to ruin anything about this. All I want to do is change the oil. So next step is clean up and surface prep. Alright, now if you're paying attention, you see me clean the holes out. That's to make sure there's nothing behind or inside those holes that'll give me a false torque reading. And you also see me reaching down into here. This is a cavity, and the oil won't drain out of that, so you need to wipe it out. Wipe it out, clean it out. When I change the fluids in any vehicle, I like to let them set for a couple hours just to make sure everything gets out of them. What prompted this oil change was I checked the fluid level, and the oil that I dipped out of the rear end looked like it had glitter in it, which means that there's some metal in the oil from wear. This truck has 180,000 miles on it, so it's not unexpected to have some wear. But what I want to do is get all that metal out. So what I have here is Neodymium Magnets. These are very strong magnets. Don't confuse them with your black ceramic magnets. These magnets are very difficult to get apart. And so they're going to collect a lot of metal. And what I do is you take and put one of these magnets down here in the bottom of this cover, just like that. And that's strong enough that will stay right where it's at. And whatever metal floats by that magnet will adhere to it. And that'll draw the metal out of the oil. You can't get 100% of the oil out of this rear end. That is a fact. So there's going to be some contamination left. I want to make sure I collect all the contaminated metal out of it, because that contamination is what ruins the bearings. All right, so now I got the neodymium magnet in place. I'm ready to put this back together. I've looked up the torque spec on this, and I don't know what it is for your vehicle, so I'm not going to mention a torque spec, although it does seem fairly light on my vehicle. We're going to go through one more cleanup process before I put the gasket and the sealer on it. When you're using sealer like this, I'm going to tell you it's advisable to follow the directions. A lot of guys don't. A lot of guys figure they know how it goes together. But all of the sealer I've seen fail has always failed because of contamination. There's oil on the surface. So we're going to give this another shot of brake clean. Make sure this is clean. And we're going to wipe it down. Clean the inside out. I'm going to pause here for a second. I said I have looked up the torque spec on these bolts. Everything I have found says between 33 and 35 foot-pounds. I have this torque wrench set to 20 foot-pounds. I'm going to do a crisscross pattern. There's 12 bolts. I'm going to go left, right, all the way around at 20 pounds. Then I'm going to go back and do them again at 33. Now what you just saw was me go crisscross around this I believe it was 2 times, and then just go around the circle once. That's all at 20 pounds. The reason I done that is because even when the wrench clicked, going back, every bolt took another 10 degrees turn. So you want to make sure that they're all tight. On a cover like this, in my opinion, torque is relevant in that you don't want to break the bolts off, but it's more relevant in that you don't want one bolt tighter than the other, because that causes the looser bolt to leak. You want every bolt to be exactly the same tightness. So we're going to go back around this again at 33 foot-pounds. Paying attention, on these 2 bolts here, I thought that I got over tight, and you saw me back them off and then retorque them to 33 foot-pounds. On a foot-pound torque wrench of this style, it gets really difficult to tell when you're at the proper torque on lower settings. 100 foot-pounds, this thing snaps like you're breaking bones. At 20, 30 and less, it clicks real light. And there's a proper way to use a torque wrench. You saw the first time, if you're paying attention, I didn't have a hold of the head of the torque wrench. That's why it got over tight. Always hold the head of your torque wrench when you're torquing a bolt. All right? Stabilize the head, hold the torque wrench by the handle at the proper level. That way you get an accurate torque, and you don't get what I call a soft click. you get a sharp snap. All right, we're done with that. Last thing to do is put these lines back where they go. Get in there. You also saw me checking the position on these bolts. I couldn't remember exactly what hole they went in. That's my bad. All right, I'm gonna let this set for about an hour. Make sure the sealant cures. Come back and put some oil in it. All right, one of the last things I'm gonna do before I fill this back up is I'm gonna put a date on it and the mileage. And the reason I'm doing that is because this is not oil that you'll change on a scheduled basis, most likely. And so I'm gonna forget when we've done this. $8.75. And since you're keeping older vehicles longer, this is important information to know. You won't lose it if it's written on the cover. All right, so we've reached the important part, the really important part, which is putting oil back into the vehicle. I'm gonna tell you, there's a lot of times where people forget this step. It's a bad thing to do. That's a really, really expensive mistake to make. All right, so this drain plug does have a magnetic center on it, which I wasn't sure it had originally, but there it is anyhow. And what we want to do is make sure you get all of that cleaned off. You'll recall that I did put a magnet inside the back cover. So now we're looking at 2 magnets. This does not appear to be a neodymium magnet. Looks like a plain old ceramic magnet, which is fine, but you want to make sure you clean it off. Then we've got our oil. I have nothing to do with this brand. This is not sponsored by this brand. I'm just showing you this is the oil. The hardest part about doing this is getting this oil into the differential. And for doing that, we're going to use a little bit of hose. We're going to put this over top of this. We'll come in here like this. And then we'll raise this up like that to get all the oil out of it. You'll recall we said this truck holds 5.5 pints of oil. The seal on this thing is good. All right. So there, we got it open. Put our cap on there. Tighten that up. Put our hose on there. Good and snug. All right. We'll get this in position. So you can see the oil flowing through the hose. All right, so you just saw we're at the end of this bottle. You also had noticed me wiping the side of it a little bit every now and then. That little bit of dribble comes from having a short hose. You can make whatever joke about that. Ow! All right, looks like we're starting to get full here. I can touch the oil with my finger. So we're going to put this back in there. And you want to be sure and get these plugs pretty snug. That there is pretty much the end of the job. The only thing left to do is to put the spare tire back up under it get it down off the jack stands, and we're going to run it a little bit and then recheck the oil level to make sure we're full. All right, having put in the amount of oil the book calls for, taking the truck around the block, we're going to pull this plug one more time and see if the oil is up to the bottom of that hole. We'll clean the hole out, make sure that we're not dipping oil from the threads. Take your finger in, pull it out, there's oil. All right, so she's full. Tighten this back down, and there's a job well done. Yeah, appreciate you watching Let's Fix It. I hope you're enjoying what I'm doing here. If you do like it, please hit the like button. Please subscribe and tell your friends about my channel. Thanks again for watching.